Man, that's South Korean horror. Tale of Two Sisters stars Im Soo-young and Kim Ji-woon. What's up, guys? This is a very special review because I have a special guest, and that is the Horror Addicts. Love these guys. I've worked with them quite a few times. They've joined me on my 31 Days of October for the past 2 years. And if you haven't checked out their channel, make sure you go up there and check it out because they love horror. And if you watch one of their videos, you'll be able to tell. They are just the real deal. And they're one of those horror groups that have seen just so many different types of horror movies. And when I watch their channel, a lot of times I get ideas for new horror movies that I've never even heard of. So they're awesome. So now I'm gonna turn it over to my good friends, the Horror Addicts. Take it away, Horror Addicts.
Lee, this is awesome! Brocky and I get to be on Drumdums, and we get to talk about one of my favorite movies, A Tale of Two Sisters. In particular, I'll be explaining the ending, so buckle up, kids, because this is about to get spoilery. A Tale of Two Sisters is a true treat to the senses. The colors are vibrant and beautiful, and the shots are so perfectly framed they could be portraits. The story itself unravels like a mystery. We're introduced to Sumi in the hospital in this very bleak reality, and we're left to wonder how she ended up in this place. The end of the film reveals that Sumi has dissociative identity disorder brought on by the death of her mother and sister. We learn that the stepmother and Soo-yeon had not been in the house since Sumi returned home. They were both delusions that existed only in Sumi's mind. We first see the younger sister Soo-yeon at the start of Sumi's flashback. In reality, Sumi has returned home with her father, but in Sumi's mind, she's joined by her sister and confronted by her stepmother. These characters are delusions created by Sumi, so we can't trust them. They're more archetypes than people. The wicked stepmother and the helpless waif. Sumi's fractured mind has built this scenario so that this time she can be the hero and save her sister. In the next scene, Sumi heads to her bedroom to unpack. She goes to put her notebook and diary away, and what do you know, there's already an identical set there. And when she opens her wardrobe, she finds it filled with identical skirts and blouses that match the clothing in her suitcase, showing us that Sumi and her alters have gone through this routine many times before. Sumi then switches over to her stepmother alter and goes to lay out the father's clothes, only to find out that one of the other alters has already done this. This is the first clue that Sumi has DID, but there are many more throughout the film. In any scene, the father will acknowledge Sumi or the stepmother, but never both. The stepmother takes medication after every meal, the father won't sleep in the same bed as the stepmother, and Sumi, Soo-yeon, and the stepmother are all menstruating at the same time. The next morning, Sumi has a dream where she's reaching out to her mother. When she pulls back her hand, there's blood on it, and then there's a blink and you'll miss it shot of Soo-yeon's death before Sumi wakes up. Poor Sumi can't escape the guilt she feels over her mother and sister's deaths, even in her dreams. Her guilt is so powerful that it calls out to the ghosts of her mother and sister who haunt the house. Sumi sees her mother's ghost when she wakes up from the dream. Her mother crawls towards her wearing the same dress she died in. When she stands, we see that her neck is broken from having hung herself. The ghost steps up onto Sumi's bed and stands over her. Blood drips down her leg and a hand crawls out from underneath her dress. This represents the child she lost, Soo-yeon. Later that day, Sumi is reminiscing and looking at old photos when she finds some of Yoon-jo, and she remembers that Yoon-jo came to the family as her mother's nurse. Then she sees the photos of Yoon-jo and her father together and realizes that they were having an affair while her mother was still alive. She's interrupted by Soo-yeon, who comes to join her. When Soo-yeon reaches for the photos, Sumi notices bruises on her sister's arms. This is a sign that the delusion Sumi created to protect herself is starting to unravel. Her alters are acting independently, and the abuse that her sister suffered in life has come back to haunt her. Sumi goes to the dining room to confront the stepmother, but she's essentially arguing with herself. As Yoon-jo, Sumi is able to tell herself things that she doesn't want to hear. Then Yoon-jo's brother and his wife come over for dinner. Yoon-jo, who we know is really Sumi in this scene, shares a whole bunch of funny stories from when they were growing up together that she couldn't possibly know since she's not really a sister. Then seemingly out of nowhere, the brother's wife begins choking and falls out of her chair. The woman reveals on the drive home that she panicked because she saw a girl beneath the kitchen sink. Ghosts appear throughout the film but are only ever seen by the women. The ghost beneath the sink is a young girl, so it's reasonable to assume that this is Soo-yeon. The ghost is also wearing Soo-yeon's green dress, the same dress we saw her pictured in as a young girl, and that was hanging in her wardrobe when her mother killed herself. Sumi also senses Soo-yeon's ghost. In this scene, she has taken on the identity of the stepmother. She hears the ghost of Soo-yeon beneath the sink, and when she goes to investigate, we see Soo-yeon as she appeared in the photo. She turns to look at the ghost, who is gone by the time she turns her head, but she finds Soo-yeon's hair clip, the one she wore the day she died, on the floor. Soo-yeon then grabs Sumi's wrist and appears before her. That night, Yoon-jo goes balls crazy over some photos and a dead bird and locks Soon-yeon in the wardrobe. Sumi wakes up and finds her sister, but it's too late, the damage has been done. This parallels Soo-yeon's death, where she was crushed by the wardrobe and Sumi was oblivious to her cries for help. The father returns and Sumi tells him everything that happened with Soo-yeon and the stepmother. The father, having reached the maximum level of crazy that he's willing to handle, tells her that Soo-yeon is dead. This breaks part of Sumi's delusion and she's forced to finally let Soo-yeon go. Then the father decides it's a good time to leave his mentally ill daughter home alone. As you can imagine, this is the worst idea ever. Sumi is still reeling from the bomb her dad dropped on her about Soo-yeon, so the stepmother alter takes over and drags the bloodied body of Soo-yeon through the house in a sack. Of course, this is just another part of Sumi's delusion, a means of coming to terms with Soo-yeon's death. Sumi wakes up and finds the bag, and still she fights to save her sister. Sumi gets a momentary flash of the truth where she sees herself as the stepmother, but still she clings to this delusion, and the scene culminates with a full-on Fight Club battle where the stepmother alter takes over and Sumi beats the crap out of herself. Then, what do you know, the father finally returns with the real Yeonju, a much more subdued looking woman than the archetype created by Sumi. She also seems to be haunted by guilt, but in her case it's well deserved. We see in the flashback that she knew Soo-yeon was in danger, but she left her to die anyway. Still, Yeonjo is more complicated than the archetype created by Sumi. Yeonjo does hesitate and almost goes back, but is stopped by a confrontation with Sumi. Sumi sees Yeonjo and storms off. Yeonjo tells Sumi that if she leaves, she might regret it, which, as we know, she does. Sumi's tale ends at the hospital. She hears whistling, and we know that this is Soo-yeon's ghost, as the alter was unable to whistle. Her sister's presence is a comfort to her, and it gives her the strength to finally remember what really happened. It's sad, but also promising, as now Sumi can move forward and hopefully find some kind of peace. Soo-yeon's ghost returns at the end of the film to punish the real stepmother, who has returned to the empty house after visiting Sumi in the hospital. The stepmother enters Soo-yeon's room and sees a blue ribbon disappear beneath the curtain. This is the same blue ribbon worn around the waist of Soo-yeon's dress. The stepmother opens the curtains and the door slams shut behind her, and the door to the wardrobe opens, beckoning her towards it. She sees the ribbon again and pulls it. Soo-yeon crawls out of the wardrobe. Her cries echo throughout the room and an ectoplasm spills out behind her. Frozen in fear, the stepmother cowers against the shelf as Soo-yeon's ghost crawls towards her and takes her vengeance. Now, I'm sure you all have gathered after listening to me talk at length about this movie that I truly love this film. To give it a Drumdums rating, I'm going to give it a trapped on an island. Anyhow, thank you guys for listening to my thoughts on this film, and Lee, thank you so much for having me on your show. If you guys want to join me and Brocky for more horror movie talk, you can join us over on our channel, Horror Addicts, where horror is family.
South Korean horror is fastly becoming one of my favorite horror subgenres. I've watched The Wailing, I've watched Train to Busan, and as a matter of fact, this was Hayley's idea from Horror Addicts. She said, hey, why don't we do Tale of Two Sisters? I was totally game because I've been looking for more South Korean horror to jump into. So Tale of Two Sisters is about these two sisters, Sumi and Soo-yeon. They are coming home from a mental institution, and right away there's trouble in Denmark because the father is living with their stepmother, who, like many kids, do not get along with. They don't get along with their stepmother. And that element of this movie plays a big part in what unfolds. And the reason that they've been in a mental institution because their mother passed away. And so it kind of sent them over the edge. Now, the first thing I love about this movie, and probably with most Asian films, is the ambiguity of it. When you watch this movie the first time, you might be confused. And like The Wailing, this is one of those movies that you have to keep your brain in your head. You have to pay attention to what's going on. And I'm not gonna lie, there were a couple of times I was like, oh, let me rewind that because I think I might have missed something. This is one of those types of films, but it's all intentional. The director of this movie is a master at directing horror movies. And I think American horror directors could really learn a lot from directors like Kim Ji-woon. He is just phenomenal. I'll give you an example. There's one scene where the married couple, they're having a get-together, and one of the characters in this scene, they have a reaction to the drink. And the way that scene unfolds and the way it is directed is just flawless. It gets under your skin, it's creepy as hell, and more importantly, it's realistic. Also, this movie has a great story and it likes to settle in on that story. It doesn't depend on just horror and even scares to tell the story. As a matter of fact, this movie, to me, it's not really that scary, but that's not a con. I don't have to be completely freaked out by a horror movie to love it. I just have to be engaged, and this movie was so engaging. The characters are so engaging. The acting is phenomenal. I could go on and on and on. Loved the hell out of this movie, and more importantly, I can't wait to see it again because I know next time I watch it, I'll get something more out of it. The third act really goes into all kinds of crazy places, but I am giving A Tale of Two Sisters a Trapped on an Island. It is a fantastic film. Can't wait to watch it again. Thank you so much, Horror Addicts. Now, guys, I want to know in the comments what you thought of Tale of Two Sisters. Please go check this movie out if you haven't. Also, if you want to talk more horror, come on over to Killer Flicks. As a matter of fact, the other day I just posted that I have the book for Asian horror. Give me some recommendations, and there was just an onslaught of horror recommendations from the members of Killer Flicks. Also, if you look down below, you can see all my social media links. If you like what I'm doing, please click that subscribe button. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.